we will post this recording for some of your colleagues if they are interested as well post-session. So we're going to talk about the one of the main parts of the story, and that is a central character. I'm going to share my screen, and just to kind of kick off a little bit of a visual on our central character. We're looking at Luke Skywalker. So what makes Luke Skywalker a hero? What do you see on his face? What makes him heroic, do you think? For those who have seen the movie, we'll take a look at some of the chats here.
I'm just thinking right away, looking at this picture and this time of his life, is his vulnerability, his wanting to be someone, and not afraid to ask for help.
Yes, is that Faye?
No, this is Christine. Sorry,
Christine. Yes, nice to see you. Thank you for offering all of that. And so this is a beautiful moment, because this is exactly how a hero becomes transcendent. I picked this photo of Luke Skywalker for all the reasons that Christine just described. I didn't pick him in his black outfit with the lightsaber, ready to take on anything. I didn't pick one of those photos because I wanted to capture the true essence of the hero before the transformation. And that is the vulnerability, but the persistence and the tenacity, because they want to be something else, or have something else, or learn something else. Thank you very much for offering that, Christine. Any other comments? Matt, you said character growth is why he's a hero. Absolutely. So what other emotions do we see on his face?
Bit of despair almost. He's looks a little down and out.
A little down and out in this one, maybe tired. Yeah, despair. Yeah, so it's those vulnerabilities that we have to remember to hang on to with our heroes, to make them transcendent. Each of us is a hero in our own story. And we know that on our own journey, we have faced trials and tribulations and challenges that threaten to crush us. And so there's a wonderful quote from Carl Jung, and I posted this on LinkedIn just this week. He is no hero who never met the dragon, or who, if he once saw it, declared afterwards that he saw nothing. And think about the last time you talked about your job or your role or your product or your service. Do you acknowledge the dragons? Do you talk about the time when you met them? Because if you don't, then really it's not a heroic tale. So we have to, I love this photo because I want to hang on to this sense of vulnerability with our heroes. And now we're going to talk about, well, why is it important to have one in your stories? So for any information that you want to deliver, whether it's about a product or a service or your business or your own journey or your team, whatever piece of communication you are trying to transmit to your audience, we need something to focus us, because we all know those moments where the stories kind of meander around the point, or they ramble on and there's too much information. And now you can kind of sense, like, if you're the listener, you're like, well, I know the point here. I just wish they would get to it. Like, I figured it out 5 minutes ago. I wish the storyteller would get to it. Well, the hero is what gives you a pair of eyes through which to tell the story. And all of a sudden, if you look at the story through that person's eyes, there's only so much information that you can share. It's only what they themselves experienced or were able to see. And it also allows your audience to see that story through that pair of eyes. So similar to when we all land in the movie theater and we're on that emotional journey, it's because we are seeing the events as they happen through the hero's eyes. We are literally stepping into their shoes. So the first question that you want to ask yourself when you're about to deliver a piece of communication is, who should be the hero of this story? And there are any number of possibilities in our business stories. Do you want to give me some ideas of who they could be? Who are the heroes, potential heroes for your business stories?
Maybe your customers?
Your customers, absolutely.
Any of the management or like the project managers trying to execute a project for a team.
Yep. Your internal heroes, project managers, anybody trying to execute that, absolutely. Thank you, Duncan. And Paul, that's a great answer. The person having the problem and seeking the solution, right? The person who is in that vulnerable position where they're trying to achieve something, but they're not really sure how they're going to do it. So you want to think about, okay, who am I telling this story to? And who are they best going to relate to as I tell this information? And use that person as your central character. So if you had a project that went off the rails and you're telling your team, hey, look, this is what happened, this is what went wrong, and here's the lesson we're taking away for the entire company. You want to tell that story firmly from the perspective of the people who were hands-on in that project, and only tell the story from their perspective. So the hero gives you focus. You know, if you're presenting a new service or product to a potential customer, you probably want to tell a story that has an existing customer as the hero, because their journey and outcome will be what your potential customer wants to experience. If you're telling a story to a new employee and trying to convey to them the type of behavior that you want to see, you probably want to use another employee as a hero, or maybe even yourself at that point. And so that's why the hero is so important. So with any piece of communication, if you start by asking yourself, okay, whose eyes am I going to tell this story through? That will help focus your story. It'll reduce the rambling, reduce too much information. Any comments or thoughts about why we need a hero? Okay, so our next question is, we have a hero. How do we make that hero transcendent? How do we make that hero relatable? And how do we make sure that as we're telling our story, our listeners are willing to go on this journey with them? I'm going to just spotlight myself so that you can see my whiteboard a little better, because I'm going to do some drawing, which I always end up doing. Any of you who have been in my courses know I spend more time drawing sometimes than anything else, and I'm not good at it. So here's a pro tip: you always tell your audience what you're drawing as you draw it, and then they think you've done a terrific job. All right, so in my course, I teach that hero is actually one of the main building blocks of a well-told story. And so we're going to build out the other two, but in a slightly different way than I normally do, because I want to stay focused on hero as the focus of our talk today. So how do we create transcendence? Well, for a story to get moving, we need that second building block, which is the hero needs a goal. The hero needs to be in pursuit of something. Christine told us that just a few minutes ago, right? Like after some change or trying to pursue something. But there are goals that are not transcendent, and there are goals that are. So there are two things that a hero can seize in a story when they're victorious. One is they can seize treasure. This is a treasure chest full of sparkly treasure. They can seize treasure. The trouble is the treasure is only for them. They can kind of hold it close and tuck it away and hide it and protect it and conceal it and not share it. And that's only for them. So when you talk about what your heroes might be in pursuit of, you kind of want to float the balloon a bit higher than just treasure. So what are some of the ways we talk about treasure in our business communications? A lot of the times when I ask my clients, okay, well, what were your customers trying to achieve? They say, well, they can, they're trying to make money. That's really what they're trying to do. They're trying to increase their profits, grow their revenues. They want to make money. Well, is that really, a higher pursuit? Is that something that, I mean, we can relate to wanting to make money, but does that kind of fire up the soul and get you jumping out of bed in the morning? Can't wait to do it? No, not really. Maybe for some, but in some ways, not at all, Christine says. So, Christine, why not?
Because that's a part of everyday living. So I feel like the goal I feel you're trying to inform us of is more aspirational. And wants someone else to get to there as well. Like it's encouraging, and you want to learn and know more so you can all march to that same beat.
Yes, that's a beautiful way of putting it. Absolutely. So treasure is an important part of a story. It's needed because the hero has to grab that first. But then you're absolutely right. The trick to really great storytelling is to transform that into something bigger than the hero himself or herself. In Star Wars, in the first film, we meet this kind of arrogant, brash, impatient. Frankly, Luke Skywalker at the beginning of the first movie is really irritating. He's just annoying. In my opinion, he's like really annoying. And all he wants to do is get off that planet and be a Jedi Knight like his father. Well, if the movie stayed there and was only about, Luke getting off the planet and becoming a Jedi Knight, why would any of us care? We wouldn't care. But very quickly, Luke meets a mentor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, who transforms his goal into something bigger than himself. And this is where a hero becomes transcendent. So, I'm erasing treasure not because it's not important. Luke still gets off the planet and he still becomes a Jedi Knight. But in the end, he pursues something much bigger than himself. And it's more like an elixir. It's this elixir that is that's a bottle of potion, just so you know. So the elixir brings harmony and balance to the world. And it's true, like Christine said, it brings everybody along on the journey. And so what Luke ends up attaining really is this power, this force that is going to bring peace to the galaxy, that is going to defeat the evil empire and bring peace to the galaxy. So I guess when you're thinking about your heroes, your project managers, your customers, your employees, even yourself, start with treasure. Maybe that's the easiest place to start when you think about, okay, what were they trying to achieve? But then maybe ask yourself, there's a really useful question, and 2-year-olds ask it constantly. And there's a Japanese business philosophy that it actually works in adults. Just keep asking why. They wanted to make money. Why? Why? And what would that allow them to do? And so what it does, every time you ask why, it raises the balloon a little higher. And I think you are going to hear when you get to the goal that is that aspirational goal. Paul, you called it Ishikawa. Is that the Japanese technique of asking why? I think it's like 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, it's the 5 whys. Yep.
The 5 whys. There you go. Yeah, and 2-year-olds, like they already know. Put your shoes on. Why? We're going to the park. Why? Because you need to get outside. Why? All right, so this is the first way that we transcend our hero, is we create a goal that is bigger than themselves. And there is always one, by the way. When I say create, I don't mean, you know, make one up and embellish and lie about it. That's not at all what we're talking about. It's like tapping into that higher goal that they had. So that's the first way. Now, the second way takes us to this third building block of great stories, because if Luke Skywalker announced at the beginning of the film, I want to be a Jedi Knight, and he spent the next 10 minutes, you know, practicing his lightsaber techniques, and 10 minutes later, he was a Jedi Knight, yay. You know, we hate that movie, right? That's not a movie, because we're missing conflict. And I'm just going to get to Jordan's comment here. And these goals can be measurable KPIs that we can define as success, right? Absolutely. If you want to measure your impact in your environment, you know, how are you doing that? You're not just doing that by revenue. Hopefully, you know, there are other measurements that you're using. The other way that the hero transcends is the hero faces conflict. And this is where we get to Carl Jung's very moving quote about facing the dragon. In our business stories, what we tend to do is, even if we've identified the central character of our story and we start telling the story, we gloss over the conflict. We don't really mention the dragon. We don't describe the dragon. We say, well, we faced a bit of a challenge and then we did all these wonderful things. Or, you know, we had a little bit of a setback, but then we overcame them and did all these wonderful things. Or we don't mention the dragon at all. You know, the second part of Carl Jung's comment, you know, we definitely saw the hero saw the dragon, but then acts like he saw nothing. Well, we don't trust that, number one. We don't relate to perfection. And we don't go on any sort of emotional journey with a hero who hasn't faced the dragon. So when it comes to your stories, you know, if you're telling the story of a customer who faced a particular challenge and how you help them overcome it, be specific, be descriptive. Describe the dragon, which I'm not even going to attempt to draw because I did a practice run and it's really not good. So just imagine dragon. Describe the dragon. And if a project went off the rails and you're taking a valuable lesson from that, go into a bit of detail. Because what happens is your story now becomes less about the differences in the story. Remember, my client wanting Division A story, Division B story, Division C story. Well, as soon as we start talking about conflicts, as soon as we mention the monsters that we're fighting, you know, we've all fought the same monsters. And we've all felt the frustration and the despair and the exhaustion and the vulnerability that comes when we fight those monsters. So we can actually bring people all on the same page, even though the little minute details are different. We can get them on the same page because they know what that fight is like, because they've been there. They've engaged in that fight. So when you start to tell your stories, if you build out these 3 building blocks and use them as your focus, you have already created a story that will transcend the differences and create an emotional connection with a wide variety of audiences. Now, there are some ways to think about types of heroes, and I want to kind of walk through 6 different types of heroes. If you want to screenshot this, you can before I wipe it. This is like I don't do PowerPoint very well. I get tired of PowerPoint, thank goodness. All right, so when you're thinking about, another way to help you focus your story and, okay, so how do I describe this hero? What details do I put into my story? What details do I put out? Some of these might resonate with you, and certainly within the context of a particular story, they might help you get even more focused on what you need to tell in your story. So the first story is, or the first hero is an everyman. Think of John McClane in Die Hard, Bilbo Baggins in The Hobbit, Katniss Evergreen in Hunger Games. These are just regular, everyday people who are a little bit of the underdog. They have a strong moral compass, but they don't have any superpowers. There's no force under the surface just waiting to come out. What helps them, what makes them heroic, is actually their selflessness. Their genuine pursuit of something bigger than themselves, with very little, like they just don't have anything that anybody else doesn't have, but they're just in pursuit of something bigger than themselves. And so that might be a nice way to contrast your story, where this everyday person with very regular needs did something heroic. The second hero is the classical hero, and we just saw one, that's Luke Skywalker. There is a little bit of a superpower there, but they look ordinary on the outside. So if you're telling a product story, perhaps a story about your business itself, this is where you can really frame your product or your business as a classical hero. It looked every day, but there was something special that was just waiting to come out. And it took facing a conflict and overcoming it for it to really shine. So that's another way to think about heroes and get super focused. The third hero is the epic hero. And this is literally Superman and Wonder Woman. 2 minutes left. Thank you, Colette. Superman and Wonder Woman. They have superpowers. You can see their superpowers. They are flying through the sky. And so your product could be an epic superhero. Steve Jobs was pretty famous for framing his products as epic heroes. And so that might be a way to focus. You want to talk about their otherworldly qualities, their superhuman and heroic deeds. The fourth one is a tragic hero. And if we are telling a story about a project that went sideways and taking the lessons, we want to highlight the flaws and the mistakes that we kind of brought this on ourselves in a way. But we've learned the lesson. We're going to do better next time. But we did sort of bring this on ourselves. So if you're telling a story like that, frame it as a tragic hero. What was the fatal flaw? What was the error in judgment that leads to the downfall? And it does evoke a feeling of pity and a little bit of fear in the audience, so they'll take that lesson and really take it to heart. The fifth one may not come up so much. The fifth one may not come up so much in your business stories, but the anti-hero, that's Deadpool. He's just kind of this broken guy with sort of bad tendencies, but ends up doing heroic things despite himself. Han Solo is another example. Captain Jack Sparrow, Will Money from Unforgiven, just kind of this unsavory character who ends up doing something heroic. That may or may not come up in your business stories. And then our sixth one is a Byronic hero, which is based on Lord Byron. And again, this may not come up so much in your business stories, but maybe it will. It's sort of this prickly, sullen hero who has this rich inner life under the surface, but on the surface, they may not come across in the right way. And actually, I can think of one business story that I worked on with a client where we basically framed the business as a Byronic hero. They had spent the last 10 years coming across one way, but in reality, what was under the surface was something very different. So that is the quick, how to create a transcendent hero. Think about their goal, float that balloon higher than treasure. It's bigger than treasure, and acknowledge and be descriptive about the conflict. What was the dragon they faced? And then you can sort of categorize them into these 6 categories to help you decide what details are important to put in and what details can you leave out. Okay, I took a little 2 minutes longer, but I'm going to open it up to questions now for those of you who have some. And I encourage this part of the discussion because some things come out of it that I may not have planned to say, but will be valuable to everybody on the call. So please fire away. And thank you for acknowledging you draw on your Zoom calls, Jordan. That's great. I'm not alone.
I have a question. This is Christine again.
Hi, Christine.
Hi. And then you may cover this off in the other 2 sessions, but just looking back at these 3 building blocks.
Yeah.
Is there I want to say like a time allotment you feel is appropriate? Like if you're trying to just get across these 3 building blocks as you're storytelling, if that takes you longer than 15 minutes, is that you start to lose people? I'm just curious, like, do you set time parameters around any of this?
Yeah, so I think this is a great question. It depends what the scenario is. So from beginning to end, a conversational story should take about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. And that's in a meeting, introducing yourself to a new customer, just in conversation. 90 seconds to 2 minutes is ideal. Beyond that, you're probably putting in too much information. Now, with a formal presentation, the ideal amount of time is anywhere from 15 to 18 minutes, 20 minutes, I guess, but somewhere in there, and then leave the rest of the time for questions. Now, you can extend your 18 to 20 minutes as long as you have moments of engagement where you literally ask them to do something or answer something, then you might be able to extend that. Of course, you risk going off the rails a little bit with your story if you take a tangent, but beginning to end about that amount of time. So that doesn't answer how much time per building block though, which I think might be what you were getting at. And so in our next webinar on June 8th, I am going to talk about structure and plot. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about, which parts of the story should get a little bit more detail compared to others. And of course, that's going to switch around depending on your audience and how much background information they already have on the topic. But yeah, I think from beginning to end, those are sort of the guidelines.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Is anyone about to build a presentation or, present an idea at a meeting and now you're thinking about who the hero is?
Not yet, but I feel like we should be practicing so we can become better at it.
Yes.
That's a really good point. I was actually just last week down in Arizona for a big sales meeting, and I can't help but focus on that just while sitting through the death by PowerPoints. There was just zero story. There was just no information. It was just all information, no story, no human aspect to it. And Christine, to your point, I think that's a great skill to work on, because I find I drift into that when I'm listening to these. Like, how could I be telling this differently? What could I be doing in order to engage the audience better? And it's challenging because it's not something I think that we're used to doing. We're used to sitting there going, wow, this sucks. I really don't like this. I'm not engaged. I don't like the story at all. So
Yeah.
It's a really, really good exercise to challenge yourself for sure.
Absolutely. You know, one of the challenges that I give folks in my presentation courses is that let's, you know, make the audience the hero. Make the people sitting right there that day in front of you the hero. And start your presentation with you. That word. Don't start the presentation with I. Don't even, don't even introduce yourself yet. You know, you're going to do that, but don't do it right away. Hit them in the eyeballs with you. You are here today because you want to, you know, and what's that higher aspirational goal that they have. And at that point, you've got them, you know, like you said, Duncan, you're sitting there with this death by PowerPoint. It's probably because the person has gotten as far as, here's the information I want to show them. And I'm going to show you this, and I'm showing you this because, and we want you to see this because. Well, if you walk in, you know, get up to present and you say, every single one of you cares about this. And yet there's a conflict that stands in your way. And for the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you how we're going to solve that conflict so you can hit your goal. Holy cow, who isn't listening? Right? And then you've done that beginning, and then you can say, for any of you in the room who don't know me, I'm Colleen Stewart which I don't even think I said at the beginning of my session, but you know, at some point we're in the story. We don't even care who you are. Just tell us what we need to know so we can get out there and accomplish our goal, you know? And that's what I found early days doing presentation consulting. When I first started, I thought my job was to count ums and tell people how to hold their hands and, you know, teach them how to breathe and all that stuff. And man, I don't want to be doing that for any length of time, but it also doesn't really help people. You know, I watched Jamie Oliver and TED Talks do a fantastic presentation, terrific storytelling. And at one point he full on turns his back to the audience, you know, and he stays like that for, I think, a couple of minutes. It's like, you know, any presentation coach in the world would say, don't do that, but it doesn't matter because we're caught up in the story. So it's definitely a different kind of perspective, Jordan, as you said, on meeting approaches. I think we talk a lot in terms of presentations sometimes, but I think I'm glad that you're picking that up because these are conversations as well, and they can have just as much impact as a formal presentation if we're using our storytelling. Any other questions? I like the questions. It gives us all a chance to chat about other stuff. All right, well, maybe I'll ask, what was your key takeaway from the webinar? And you can put it in the chat, just so I know what's resonating. And while you're doing that, I'm going to grab something just quick. The movie analogy at the beginning. It's a good way of thinking about your audience. Yeah, they're really no different. We're humans in the end. Doesn't matter what degree. The hero type, setting the bar higher for goals, bigger picture. Absolutely. That's great. Start with you. Yes, I challenge you to do that in your presentations. And the 3 building blocks, wonderful, wonderful. And whose eyes are telling the story. That's good. That's good. Well, everyone, if you are interested in learning more about the Story Compass, I'm just going to go back to the PowerPoint. This QR code will take you to my Story Compass Online page on the website. So the Story Compass Online is a fully self-directed online course. where you get deep into this stuff. And the Story Compass actually teaches 4 types of stories that you can tell in your business. It shows the structure for each, and I know some of you have done the Story Compass with me in person, but we go through 4 story types, the structure for each. You actually record your storytelling and submit it in this course. I hope I haven't now turned off about 90% of you, but it's a good, valuable exercise because, like Duncan said, it is so important to practice. So if you are interested in more information, then check out the website, perfectpitchpros.com. And you can also order this on Amazon. My first book, Story Compass, which was published in December 2020 and has helped countless business people tell better stories at work and connect with a wide variety of their audiences. Thank you, Duncan. Thank you. So everyone, I'm going to send you off. I'm going to wish you great storytelling. And thank you all for taking the time to be here with me today. I will ask one more little favor. If you liked this webinar, would you please give me a shout out on LinkedIn? It just helps boost the profile and help get other people connected so they can learn the same great content that you are learning. And for all of you who are coming back on June 8th, Christine, I will see you next session, and I'll think of some more references besides Star Wars, but we'll we'll find some more stories to tell. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Bye. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There we go. You're muted, Colette.
Sorry,